Welcome back, intrepid listeners. Thank you for continuing to join me for part 2 of my review and commentary of the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade movie. So where I left part 1 was Elsa had just betrayed Indy to the Nazis, handed over the Grail diary to them, and Indy and his father were being escorted by them to a kind of dining area, and we see Elsa hand over the diary and to someone in a high back chair that's facing the fire in the room. We don't see who's in the chair quite yet. Indy asks his father, "How did you know she," meaning Elsa, was a Nazi? To which he replies, "She talks in her sleep," and gives the indication that yes, he slept with her too. Indy gives him a double look. They don't really get to talk about it then, but they do later, although he does make a comment that why did you trust her? And we see that the person in the high back chair is actually Walter Donovan, and who makes a comment that because he didn't take my advice, which he gave before they left, don't trust anybody. So we see that Donovan is actually in league with the Nazis to try and hunt down the Grail. As a bit of a behind-the-scenes comment, when Sean Connery or Henry Jones made that line, it was a complete impromptu thing. It was not in the script, and half the crew and several of the cast just broke down laughing their heads off at it, which I can see. But it is typically Bond of him as well. It's a little bit of his Bondness coming out there with that comment. But anyway, it turns out that there are some pages that the map was taken out of the diary, and that Marcus has them. Donovan thinks Marcus is an idiot, and they'll be able to find him quickly. Indy tries to make an argument that Marcus is actually a lot cleverer than anyone else thinks, that he'd be able to blend in and disappear. But then we cut to the very next scene that he's in Iskendron and not understanding a word and sticking out like a sore thumb, as Donovan was suspecting he would. He meets up with Sala, and we get to see a bit more of Marcus's denseness here, because they are about to be picked up by the Nazis again. Sala sees what's going on, tries subtly to tell Marcus to run. Marcus doesn't get it, like, run. Yes. Yes, a morning edition to the paper right here. Run. Yes. And it's not until Sala actually knocks out one of the people trying to capture them, albeit a little bit subtly, but yeah, still enough for Sala to see what's going on, that Marcus gets, oh, right! And off they go, but the Nazis end up capturing him anyway, because the shop front where Sala thought it was hiding was actually the back of a truck. Next we see Henry and Indy tied up in a separate room at Brynwood Castle. There's a bit of a passionate goodbye between Indy and Elsa, and then a punch to the face by the captain to Indy as well, which ends up getting Henry in the back of the head. I do just want to skip ahead a little bit here, because you are welcome to watch the movie on your own. But put simply, there's an escape, some hijinks ensue with the escape, and including essentially what is a bit of a joust, which Henry admittedly, you can see a little bit of joy in that particular bit of it. That was kind of happening there. Nazi Indy versus a Nazi on motorbikes, where Nazi had a gun but was not using it, and Indy had used a broken down flagpole as a lance to knock this guy off his bike. But they end up getting to a point where it's a choice of either going back to Italy or going to Berlin. And Henry is trying to convince Indy to go to Berlin because that's where the diary is, and because there's more in the diary than just the map. And Henry says, in order to get to the Grail, we'll need to go through several booby traps, which I found the clues how to get through them, which is in the diary, and I wrote them down so I wouldn't have to remember them. So that's why we need to get the diary. And so they end up going to Berlin. There's also a little bit of an argument between Henry and Indy relating to the relationship with their mother. But I'm just going to move past that. They get to Berlin. Indy sees Elsa standing behind the Fuhrer, in other words, Hitler. Finds a moment when she's alone, and they finally get to have it out a little bit. You betrayed me. You only, even though you say you only believe in the Grail, not the swastika. Indy still makes a comment that you still not to be counted. With them, and she is obviously hurt by by his anger. But given everything she's done, it is all too understandable. Yeah. So after that, Indy even gets to bump into Hitler for a second. Hitler obviously doesn't have a clue who he is or anything, but the Grail diary ends up being signed like an autograph book by Adolf, which is kind of amusing. But after that, Henry and Indy leave. They try to board a blimp, almost unsuccessfully, because the captain does end up finding them, but in a rather amusing turn of events, Indy manages to toss him off the blimp. Everyone else starts holding up the tickets because Indy says, "No ticket." So there's a bit of a amusing thing there, and again, not quite explained how Indy gets out of that situation, but they go to another part of the blimp where they're not quite as conspicuous, and they finally have a bit of a talk because Indy has managed to get the Grail diary back from Elsa in that exchange that they had in Berlin. And they have a bit of a talk about, we'd never really talked while I was growing up. Like, well, what do you want to talk about? Right now I can't think of anything. They also have a slight chat at the beginning of that section. It's disgraceful. You're old enough to be her grandfather. And personally, I can't really disagree. And not that I really want to go into this too much on this particular podcast recording thing that I'm doing. But there's a part of me which is wondering what the heck Elsa was thinking. And generally speaking, for people who do get into those kinds of relationships, what the blazes are you thinking? I mean, really? Do you want to be having thoughts in the middle of things? That's not how your dad did it, or your dad did it better, or your son is better, or anything like that. I mean, that's just weird to me. Bizarre, and it will always be so. And I do wonder, surely Elsa, having the memories that she would have had, considering that she had the son after she had the father, yeah. But anyway, moving on. The blimp starts to turn around, and so there's another escape thing going on, and I love the bit, I didn't know you could fly a plane. Fly, yes. Land, no. And they take off. There's a bit of a aerial battle. Henry accidentally shoots the tail of the plane they're in, blames it on the other guys, but the plane ends up going down. And so there's more of a ground chase that happens, and Henry ends up using a flock of birds to knock out one of the planes, or the remaining plane that's still following them. And away they get. They meet up with Sala in Iskendron, where Sala tells them that Marcus has been captured. And so as a result, they have the map. And so the next task is to find where they are, so they can rescue Marcus. There's a bit of an action sequence that happens. Just before that, you got Donovan, who's meeting with, I'm assuming, a prince in the area, or some to get permission to operate in their borders or in their territory. And all it takes is for Donovan to hand over his car, which granted is a nice car. It's a Rolls Royce, so yeah. And this guy doesn't want any of the treasures from noted German families, which I'm sure was pillaged by Jews, but again, we'll gloss over that part. And yeah, so they get a tank, several troops and whatnot, and they, again, action sequence, they end up rescuing Marcus. Indy is thought dead for a few minutes, but ends up climbing up from the side of the cliff where the tank fell off. And they go to where the Grail is ultimately hidden. Now, this next bit I do want to talk about for a few minutes. I got to admit, I do like Donovan's thinking, in that because Indy says to him, "Shooting me won't get you anywhere," because they go actually, let me take a step back. They get to the entryway to where several people have tried getting past the first trap and failed, much to their beheading. And then there are a couple of guards behind where Indy and crew are hiding, the crew being made up of Indy, Sala, Marcus, and his father. And they end up being captured, brought before Donovan and Elsa and the remaining guards. The Nazi captain guy has died in the tank that exploded, so he's not there anymore, not part of it. And there's a bit of a discussion between Donovan and mainly Henry and Indy, where Donovan says, "I'm not interested in helping the Nazis. I mean, they wanted the Grail to become immortal, take over the world, and all this kind of stuff. But that's not what I'm after. I just want immortality. I just want the Grail itself, so that I can see the world and all these kind of lofty and be immortal. And given the fact that he's an old man, still relatively fit, but certainly getting along in years, I'd say in his 50s would be my guess, as a rough kind of guesstimate. And so you can see where he'd be coming from. So he ends up pointing a gun initially at Indy. Indy makes a comment, "Shooting me won't get you anywhere." To which he says, "Dr. Jones, you're right." Points a gun at Henry, fires in the gut, and he makes a comment, "Only the healing power of the Grail can save your father now. It's time to ask yourself what you believe." And Indy has no choice. If he wants his father to live, then he's going to have to go through this. Now, fortunately, he's had a chance to look through the Grail diary with his father while they were on the blimp, and he took them through the three things. And the first one is the phrase, "Only a penitent man will pass." And he's constantly repeating that to himself, as is Henry, who's lying there with Marcus and Sala, who are taking care of him while Indy's proceeding on. Only a penitent man will pass. Penitent, only a penitent man will pass. And it takes him a moment to realize that only a penitent man is humble and kneels before God. And here's where I've got a bit of a problem. Small one. He's right on that point. No issues there. So I've got no problems with him kneeling to get past the first blade, but I don't get the point of the second blade when it comes to being a penitent man, being a humble man. Because one blade goes horizontally, and as though it would cut off someone's head if they were standing up, which is what's happened to the past couple of volunteers. And the other blade goes vertically. Now, what part of... Because if he had bent over as if to bow instead of to kneel, that would take care of the head that way, I guess. But I really don't see the point of it. Anyway, Indy rolls through the second blade, so ends up surviving both, and then pulls a rope or stops the mechanism that causes these blades, and yells back, "We're through." And I've never really understood the point of that second blade. I'm happy for people to comment or whatnot to tell me what their thoughts are on that one. But yeah, anyway, so we get to the second clue. Only in the name, in the word of God will one proceed, or something like that. And the word of God is the name of God. In other words, Jehovah. Now, I've got a problem with this one too. No problems with in the Latin alphabet, Jehovah starts with an I instead of a J. And now, my question is, how is Indy still standing after standing on J initially? Because even if he was holding on to the J, to the I, when he fell through the J, I don't know what the I is actually holding on to, because each of these letters are not connected to each other when you see that he steps from one to the next. And so they are in the middle of loose steps. And when he falls through, you don't see there's any beams or anything that the individual letters are standing kind of held on by or anything like that. So I don't know how these letters are still are there when someone stands on them, regardless of whether you stand on the right letters or not. So there's that. There's also the fact that I'm sure anyone else who had fallen through, had any other people made it through that first trap, that they would have just fallen straight through and not be able to hold on to anything. And that there would have been a massive hole in the floor where they were, rather than just a one hole where the J was. Or whatever letter they had accidentally chosen. But anyway, so there's that. But he remembers idiot. In Latin, Jehovah starts with an I. And he then makes it through this one. And then gets to the last trap. Only by a leap from the lion's head will he prove its worth. And this one's pretty clever. I've got no real issues with this one, really, with only one kind of minor exception. Being, I don't know how there could be a trick of the light with stone. Because you can see when Indy gets to, he's initially like, I can't see a thing. It's going to need to be a leap of faith, which obviously he doesn't have. But kind of says a little prayer to within himself, I guess, takes that step and lands on the stone pathway. That's across this really wide ravine. But I don't think that is naturally possible. Because stone is a color of stone. And unless you managed to paint it, which would not have been possible 1,000 years ago or longer, whenever this was actually made or whatever, there's no way that I mean, nowadays, sure, I can see it happening, because people can be quite creative with things like chalk and paint and whatnot to, with things on the ground. To make them look 3D and whatnot. And I think it's really incredible how people are able to do that. But not 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. So I've got a bit of a problem there too. But when Indy gets to the other side, to make it so that he can see where he's going on the way back, and possibly because he knows that Walter and Elsa are going to be following him, he grabs a handful of gravel, throws it across so that they can see where this pathway is and make it across themselves. There's a small crawl space, which he crawls through and gets into what I will call the Grail Room, where where the last of the three knights awaits. He's ancient, and badly tries to attack him with a sword, misses, surrenders to Indy, and tries to hand the sword over to him as the next Grail protector. But before he even really gets a chance to do that, Walter and Elsa enter the room. And this next part, I don't know how much was intentional on Elsa's part. I mean, Elsa, given what she said in the past, I can certainly see her not wanting Walter ultimately to have the Grail. I can see her wanting it for herself for varying reasons, but she can also see the dangers of Walter having it. So, because when Walter says, I don't know which one it is, I'm not a historian or an archaeologist. So Elsa says, let me choose for you. And I don't know if she chose this accidentally or chose this deliberately or accidentally, but she chooses one that does look pretty, is made of gold and whatnot, and Walter thinks this surely is the cup of the King of Kings. and he goes, there's a little bowl of water there, which he fills the grail, or the supposed grail with, takes a drink, and ends up disintegrating to ash, much to Elsa's terrification. And the knight says he chose poorly. Like, well, duh. And Indy then grabs a cup that is golden inlaid, but nothing special on the outside. Takes a drink, and the knight tells him, "You have chosen wisely, but you can't take it beyond the Great Seal near the doorway because that is its limitations and the price of immortality." This next bit, again, really, but Indy must fill the cup with water, make his way back all that way through the crawl space, across the Jehovah pathway with a name in reverse, and through the now stopped blades, and all with the water not spilling, or not much of the water spilling, so that he can get it to his father to heal his father. Because the cup is still relatively full when they get back, him and Elsa. He manages to save his father with having his father drink some of the grail water and pouring some more of it on the wound. And another blooper, I guess, is that even after emptying most of the water from the cup, or what was left of it, onto the wound, and you can see that the cup is almost upside down, it still looks like there's a good mouthful left in it when Henry goes to look at the grail, something he's sought for much of his life, after he's been healed. Small blooper, but still. Anyway, they put the cup down and start to make ready to leave. Elsa then does the most monumentally stupid thing, picks it up and tries to leave with it. This caused, even with Indy trying to warn her, don't do it, the knight said not to take it. And this causes a big earthquake kind of thing to happen. She dies trying to get the grail from the small ledge that it's landed on in this earthquake. Indy almost dies, but it's not until, because throughout the movie, Henry keeps calling Indy Jr. And it's not until Henry calls his son Indy, or Indiana, that he finally realizes, okay, I need to let this go. And they end up getting out of there. Both Henry and Indy get to see the knight one last time as they wave goodbye to him, and then they leave. And Henry makes a comment to Indy, Elsa never really believed in the grail. She thought she'd found a prize. And Sala makes a comment to, or asks the question, as they're getting onto the horses to make ready to leave. What is this? What is always this Junior? That's his name, Henry Jones Jr. I like Indiana. We named the dog Indiana. The dog? You are named after the dog? Goes Sala. I've got a lot of fond memories of that dog. And yes, we did get to see the dog at the beginning of the movie, but yeah. And then he makes a comment that Marcus got lost in his own museum, but anyway, Marcus tries to lead the way out of there, and they go riding off into the sunset, and end of movie. So as a final kind of commentary and review, overall an entertaining movie. Did have its share of bloopers and bad plot points, don't get me wrong, that I have mentioned, but it is one that I have quite enjoyed. I do hope that you have enjoyed this particular review of the movie of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade that I have just done. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you do, as I do intend to do more of these for various movies, possibly the other Indiana Jones movies, and certainly other ones that I have or will watch in the future. And yeah, thank you very much, and till next time.